right, so anyone has any questions or topics that...
I do.
Okay, Chris. Yes, please.
I was just wanted to continue the conversation we had about regarding pain and torturing yourself in meditation, right? So I just want to share my direct experience, like coming from a Vipassana retreat recently. I actually felt then when I doing aditana, which is like strong determination sitting over a certain period of time, it actually creates more sankaras, as they call it, which like emotional residues or emotional or energetic patterns to arise. And so how I understood it is that like in Vipassana they say the ego is like basically based on reactivity. And when you stop reacting and just observing, then stuff is meant to come up, right? And so I felt like when there's up to a certain degree more intensity in physical pain, then there's also more coming up. This is how I felt it, and maybe you have some words to share on that.
What do they mean by react?
Either through creating like attachment in general, or either like having craving or avoidance, right? I crave a subtle sensation and I want to avoid the gross sensation. This is reacting for them.
Right, so what you probably mean to say is craving good sensations and avoiding bad sensations.
Yeah, they call it subtle and gross, but
They call it subtle and gross?
Subtle and gross because they don't like refer to it as good or bad. They see it kind of like it's just sensations, but they are like qualities of sensations. Some are more subtle, like love, or like when someone's really you feel really relaxed, and some are more gross, which is like you're really tense. You feel like the body contracting, right?
Right, but it's not a very accurate description because good sensations, for example, bliss or love, can also be extremely intense.
Mm-hmm.
So we can call them both gross if you wish. So the intent not to cling or avoid is the correct one. That's the truest meditation. So the truest meditation is when you allow for any experience without neither clinging to it nor avoiding it. And clinging and avoidance are also two sides of the same coin, necessarily. Yeah. Because if you cling to a certain sensation or a certain experience, then at the same time you're saying something that will come afterwards might be worse. So I don't want this one to end. So you're avoiding something that might come afterwards at the same time. When you're clinging to something, you're also avoiding something else that might be in its place, right? And when you avoiding something, you're also clinging because, like, let's say a bad sensation is coming. And you slowly start to realize that it's coming, and you're avoiding it. So you're clinging to the current one. You're saying the current is better. So I want to stay with the current one. I want to stay with whatever I experience. What is coming, I don't want. So you try to avoid it. So it's actually the same impulse. Mm-hmm. When you're avoiding something, you're always clinging to something. When you're clinging to something, you're always avoiding something. And so to try not to do it is, in essence, the practice of meditation. Exactly. The question here is how to do that practically, and that's a very different question. So what I sense in your question, and you correct me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong, but I get similar questions phrased differently. Is like, so basically the more direct question is, am I, by experiencing my pain or unpleasantness and by giving it attention, clinging to it and thus recreating it or creating it? That's a fairly common question. And the answer to this question is no. Because any sensation is experienced as unpleasant, like when we're talking about emotional, energetic. I'm not talking about the bodily pain, but like the physical pain, like if you cut your arm or things like that. Even though it applies to you to some degree, but to a limited degree. When we're dealing with the past, when we're dealing with our own energies, emotions, everything that is perceived as very unpleasant is also at the same time very deeply rejected. So the extent to which you perceive something as unpleasant is the extent to which you reject it, is the extent to which you avoid it. And so basically this question is a kind of a trick of the ego, because what's really happening is that a bad sensation is avoided, but accepting it, feeling it, giving it attention temporarily makes it more intense, emphasizes it. And so the ego says, oh, by giving it attention, I'm actually clinging to it. It would have been much better if we sort of didn't do this kind of stupid practice. And because then I kind of create it. You actually don't create it. It was already there. You're just giving it attention, and you become feeling it more acutely, more intensely. So so strictly speaking, just sitting does not create samskaras. It cannot, because
Not creating, but bringing it to the surface.
yes, but you said create.
No. Yeah. Then I phrased it or communicated.
Oh, okay.
But
Yes, bring it to the surface. Exactly. Exactly.
this is literally what my question is about.
Okay.
Like, the question is, like the understanding, the Buddhist understanding of Vipassana is when you sit, the sitting without reacting brings sankharas to the surface. This is
That is correct. But the part that is somewhat practically difficult here is without reacting, because if you define reacting as
it's an ideal.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
True. Then, like, no one starting Vipassana has perfect equanimity.
I actually, if we redefine reacting as doing something about it, not as clinging and avoiding, right? So clinging and avoiding is the dynamic that you will be observing in your consciousness, in your mind, for as long as there is resistance. For as long as there's resistance, there will be clinging and avoiding. Because if there's no resistance, if everything is like super clear, nothing comes up, then there's no clinging and avoiding. If anything unpleasant comes up, there's avoiding. But if we redefine reacting as doing something about it, and by doing something about it, well, first of all, of course, getting up and stopping meditating, or doing something to distract yourself from the sensation. Or try to employ some trick of consciousness to distract yourself from the sensation. Like, for example, let's say, like you can focus, like trying to escape into breath, for example, every time that it happens. Trying to escape into awareness, like reminding yourself, oh, I'm like awareness, blah, blah, blah. Or some kind of more creative tricks, like, for example, some sadness or grief coming up, and you're like, okay, let me remember my happy place, so let me imagine that it's not happening, let me remember some good memory, things like that. So for as long as you're not reacting this way, but you allow the sensation to come up, even though in this allowance you will observe clinging and avoiding, you will observe trying to look the other way, and then kind of you have to remind yourself not to avoid and not to cling, but allow. So in attempting, as you said, this is an ideal. So in attempting to approach this ideal of just allowing, they're exactly correct. So just sitting brings some scars to the surface of consciousness.
Exactly, and like my precise question was about can then be the presence of physical pain be actually a catalyst for bringing sankharas up, because it's more that you like because there's less that you react to, or like, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah. So are you asking it in the context
this was
of? Are you?
my experience that when I had, for example, when I sat on a chair doing Vipassana, or I had the 1 hour sittings on the cushion, which was more painful, I felt the meditation to be not just be physically but also emotionally
More intense.
more intense.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I understand the question now.
It's in context of your last question you answered.
Right.
Your answer.
Yeah, so you're basically asking, can putting your body through some discomfort help bring up to the surface of consciousness emotional suppression that is unrelated to this discomfort?
Exactly.
Strictly speaking, in my opinion, I might be wrong, but I don't think so. Like, strictly speaking, in my opinion, no. But the thing is, the key word here is unrelated, because it might be very much related. Like, for example, if you were made to do things that brought some discomfort to the body, can it kind of launch the same sort of, or make visible the same samskaras by association? Yes. If you were, let's say, very spoiled and kind of run away from any physical discomfort, against yourself also, because it's also self-defeating behavior. If you're like very afraid of any physical discomfort, that's also self-defeating behavior. Can this kind of form of discipline bring up some emotional material? Maybe. But judging by my own state of consciousness, if I do something right now that is uncomfortable for the body, if I'm going to cry about it, as a result of it, right? It's only going to be tears for being stupid and doing it. Like, why the hell did I do that against myself? But it's not going to be tears about something from the past, right?
Yeah, it seems to be it's quite kind of where you're coming from, like what is the exact content of the emotional topics that you're into. I can, out of my personal experience, there were two things that I two things that I recognized. The first was in the sitting. I literally had visuals a lot. I told you in one session in the Vipassana, like in psychedelics, and there was subtle, like I saw like the crocodile, like really intensely. I saw like a lion, like really like powerful visuals, and then I felt it was like strength coming up or aggression from the pain. This was kind of linked for me. You know, like this was like it felt powerful to kind of like warrior-like, just kind of sitting through. It felt like the inner warrior, the strength was built. This was the one emotional.
Oh, I see.
This was the one emotional thing that really got catalyzed through that. And the second was, I felt after Vipassana retreat, my addiction to comfort decreased significantly. So these were the two things where I...
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. I can see that. But so that's the same. I mean, when I advise not to restrict the bodily expression of emotion in meditation, this also applies to things like anger, right? So I would not advise to, like, if you're very angry and you want to like do powerful movements, like very masculine movements, like you want to hit something or like hit yourself, hit your chest, whatever it is, I would not advise to restrict that. So this advice applies to that as well. When it comes to kind of making the body uncomfortable just during the meditation, it can work this way. Yeah, I can see that. You just have to be careful. It's kind of like BDSM. You know, if you are very spoiled physically, right, and very much afraid of pain, then yeah, it can be very kind of freeing and emotionally freeing and also emotionally releasing experience to allow yourself to experience the pain. But the question here that it has to be sane. It doesn't have to damage the body,
of course not. Of course
right?
not.
And so I think that to a certain extent, it can be linked in the way that you describe. Yes, and if there is an attachment to physical comfort, then yeah, I guess. But I mean, also from my perspective, I do not see the complete enlightened state as the state of like someone who can lit themselves on fire. To me, that's actually delusion. So to me, you can train yourself to reject the bodily pain very well, but love for yourself as the body is the highest form of love to me. So to me, the quest of kind of trying to transcend the purely physical distinction between pleasant and unpleasant is a delusional quest.
I see that. I agree.
And so from my perspective, we as all animals, it's kind of okay to be attached to comfort. It's not, it's the so comfort is kind of seeking comfort is a natural behavior of any living being. The self-defeating attachment to comfort is when you know that for you need to do something uncomfortable, right? For you, it's good for you.
Exactly.
Right? It's at this particular situation, right? Like, for example,
Getting out of bed in the morning, it was so warm and cushy.
exactly.
I need to go on a cold.
Or any other number of things,
Yeah.
right? So go through pain to save your child. Engage in a physical fight when you need to, right? So there is there's a very clear. So life moves you towards the direction of pain, and you still resist it because you're very attached, and in that you're doing yourself a disservice, and you actually make the situation worse, not better, right? So that kind of discomfort if you have this sort of attachment, can putting yourself deliberately through some uncomfortable physical situation, can it help bring it up to the surface? Absolutely. But in my experience, the pain of the emotional dissolution of the ego is kind of enough to stop wanting to break this kind of attachment to the comfort. So can it expedite the process? Probably, maybe even more likely. But my point is, if you're just going to sit for long enough, even without that, in a comfortable situation, and especially if you also use psychedelics, it's still going to come up. It's just maybe going to come up slower.
Yeah, that's why the question was, can it be a catalyst, right?
Yes, I think so. Yes. So if you feel that this is what's working for you, and you keep your mind on not actually damaging the body in any permanent way.
Yeah.
So that's something that you would need to keep in mind. So again, kind of like BDSM. I mean, make sure not to damage the body in a permanent way. Then absolutely, it can be a catalyst. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you for the answer.
Yeah. What?
Thank you for the answer.
Oh, of course. My pleasure. Yeah.
So there's something that I'd like to sort of reconcile that I've heard on the spiritual path. I've heard it said that you can't see through something you haven't been through. You can't transcend what you haven't experienced, so to speak. And where that confuses me is that I know people in my life, even such as yourself, who have gone through very traumatic or painful experiences. Maybe yourself growing up in the USSR, or people that are close to me who've experienced quite severe, like physical, sexual abuse. And I've noticed a sort of a disconnect where I think, well, I haven't been through these same degrees of discomfort in my life, and it's not like I would seek them deliberately. So where is there room for me to connect with people who have been through something so extreme that I haven't? where do we, how is it we meet in the middle despite coming from such different experiences? If I hear someone, for example, tell me a story about something awful they experienced that I've never experienced in my life, whereas how is it that there's still a connection there?
Do you mean to say, in the beginning of your question, you say you can't transcend what you haven't experienced? I mean, that's kind of a truism. Maybe what you meant to say, like sometimes I say, one time I said that all of my compassion comes from experience. So, like, you cannot be compassionate towards something that you haven't experienced yourself. Is that what you mean?
Sure, yeah.
Relate? So, did you mean like be compassionate or relate to?
Compassionate, just any to do with connecting with the person, an intimacy with them and their experience.
Yeah, it's more like compassion,
Sure.
or being able to relate to rather than transcend.
Sure. Yes.
Okay, so the thing about this is, you personally in this body as a human being might not have experienced and might never experience a specific degree of suffering, right? Like, for example, I have never experienced being sexually molested as a child, or being tortured, for example. But I have experienced quite a significant amount of sexual dysfunction, sexual objectification, self-objectification, objectification of women, and some amount of physical pain, right? So I think that the way to interpret this statement is more categorically rather than the level of intensity, right? So we all understand. Let's say let's take physical pain. So we all understand what physical pain is, and even if you haven't broken your leg, you can absolutely relate to a person in front of you who has broken your leg, because you know it's gonna hurt.
Sure.
Right. So so the same egoic sufferings, principally, categorically, can be understood and related to only if you have seen them in yourself. Like for example, if even if you have a very healthy, so to say, ego, that haven't used a very destructive coping mechanisms such as self-harm or serious drug addiction, or some other like very destructive coping mechanism. If your coping mechanisms were much less destructive, kind of more benign.
So that's how you define a healthy ego, just one that doesn't sort of result to extremities.
When I say healthy ego, I mean there's no such thing as healthy ego. But when I say healthy ego, like the less extreme forms of suffering, so less extreme coping mechanisms, right? Still, in letting go of these coping mechanisms, you will experience grief, despair, and a lot of other energetic stuff. So someone who has much more suffering and much more extreme coping mechanism would go through the same process in principle, but it's going to be more intense. So it doesn't mean you cannot relate to them. You will never experience their pain specifically, right? So if you're asking me, would that be correct then to say that their pain will be more than yours and more than you will ever experience in this body? Yes. Like, for example, the emotional pain of someone who has actually murdered people, right, will most likely be more than I have ever experienced and I will ever experience. That is, but I can completely relate to and I understand the desire to murder, the rage and hatred that drives this desire, the guilt and grief by having seen this hatred in yourself, right? So it's just a matter of degree, right? And the same with the physical pain, and the same with, let's say, childhood abuse, right? So, for example, I had a very abusive father, but he never physically hit me, right? Like some would say, it's actually better to have a father who's not as abusive, who physically hits you from time to time, and that's actually, I would agree with that. But then there are fathers who consistently, both emotionally and physically abusive, consistently, right? So that is much worse. So the pain of someone who had such an upbringing would be higher than I have ever experienced. But categorically, it would be the same. The fear of him, the hatred towards him, the desire to avenge, the desire to kill him, the self-hatred that it induces, like all categorically, it would be the same. So the ego is actually quite universal human phenomenon, and you can relate to the parts of it that you have seen in yourself, even though they will be in different intensity. Now, if you're asking, what if someone were like brought up somewhere outside of this society in an enlightened, let's say, brought up by enlightened parents, never sort of was mistreated, denied unconditional love, subjugated, abused, only developed like healthy attachment to the parents, which is needed for as long as you cannot get your own food, and then it was broken in a kind of healthy way, just like chicks flying out of the nest, and then such a person comes into the human society, would he be able to remain to relate to humans? No. It would be very difficult for him to understand what's going on in this place, and they would perceive humans as deeply sick and irrational in their behavior, and very unreasonably aggressive towards each other. He would need to be explained, yeah. and most people don't understand that. So kind of the difference from the teaching perspective, the advantage of having been in samsara is that I can understand and I can relate. And I can understand and relate to all aspects of the ego, but it doesn't mean that I have experienced them in the same intensity. Right?
I suppose the love is all the same, right?
Underneath it's all the same. It's just the question of how far you depart. Right? So if you depart very, very far, so some intensity of the pain can be, like, for example, I cannot imagine the intensity of the pain that someone like Hitler or Stalin would experience if they went through the spiritual awakening, and how many years it would, like, is it possible for them to have a clear mind, to clear equanimous mind and be completely transformed? Absolutely. But I cannot imagine the intensity of their psychedelic experience, of their meditation experiences.
Thank you.
But it doesn't mean that I cannot relate to what was driving them, or I cannot guide them, at least in some way. Would it be successful? Probably not. But it doesn't mean that I don't know. So it kind of, so that's probably the better way to interpret that. All compassion comes from experience, but it doesn't mean that I experienced necessarily the same intensity of phenomena, but the variety of phenomena, because the human ego is actually, the human culture is actually a universal culture. Like, believe it or not, the differences from the perspective of enlightenment, the differences between different cultural regions and stuff like that, those aren't different at all, right? So the universally human culture have this submission to authority, jealousy, status, seeking power, seeking satisfaction at the expense of other people. You really have to go far. Like some Aboriginal tribes aren't touched by civilization. You really have to go far to find, and then you will not find it completely different. You will just find a very significantly reduced manifestation of culture. So they would not be able to relate to some of our ideas. They would find them quite crazy. But you go even, BC times, and you still see. You go ancient Greece, ancient Rome, 500 years, thousands of years before BC's before Christ, and you see all the same phenomena mostly. So my suspicion. And I don't know if I'm wrong, but everything points to it in my mind, is that the whole shebang began when we settled down, instead of gathering our own food or hunting for our own food, became producing our own food, which created surplus, and then the hierarchies started building around who gets what, and then people kind of started building this power hierarchy to be on top of each other in kind of the distribution of the surplus. That's why the closest thing that you can state that you can, when I watch some documentaries, the closest thing that I could observe to an enlightened state of mind is the Aboriginal societies which still hunt and gather for their own food, and they don't understand like the concepts of misery and stuff. And you ask them, when are you happy? And they say, well, when we have meat and honey, that's when we're happy. So they live in their bodies. Like that is not to say that it's preferred. Actually, science is a great tool. Knowledge is a great tool. You can live in the modern society knowing a lot of stuff, being very creative, enjoying all of these luxuries. You in a normal state of mind. So it doesn't mean that the kind of very primitive existence is preferred. It's just an example of a mind that is healthy. So you can have a healthy mind that leads a very primitive existence, or you may have a healthy mind that leads a very complicated existence in a society with science and stuff like that. Both are great. But what we have is we have a society with science and stuff like that, and filled with very unhealthy minds. So if our minds were healthy in some ways, we would be more like primitive people in some ways, emotionally speaking. But intellectually, all of the complexity, the ingenuity of the human mind, this can still be available. So maybe like the surplus period is like this period of development of human civilization where we started using our minds also instead of our bodies. But as a consequence of that, as a sort of price of that, we developed our egos, but we can shed it individually and also collectively as the result of each individual doing its work, and then we can end up in a pretty good society that has no irrational violence, no hierarchies, no subjugation, but still can enjoy the fruits of the ingenuity of the human brain.
Thank you.
I don't know. Maybe everybody else knows this. Everything is kind of new to me. But I've gone through periods where, since March, I was talking earlier, I had a few months where everything was like very bright and then started getting very dark. And I know there was like a feeling I started getting in like the months right after March, where I started feeling that I'm just the sum total of every experience I've had in life. I'm nothing more than like hardware in a computer. There's nothing else. And so there was a complete question. It was really frightening of like, is there a me? and I had a fear that if I kept going, I kept feeling like I was like getting close to like the top of a wave, and if I went any further, there was a possibility of crashing, and if I crashed, there might be like nothing there. So is that true? Are we nothing more than the sum total of our experiences? Are we more than that? So what else? If we work through more and more of the trauma we've been through, what's there in the end?
I can answer this question in many different ways. And none of that would be a complete answer. I can tell you that I'm nothing. I can also tell you that I'm everything. Or I can tell you that I'm just me. None of those answers satisfy the mind.
I don't even know why I'm crying.
It's okay. It's okay.
And then I think the other question was just why, after seeing so much of myself that was nothing but lies, it was just lie after lies for 52 years, just lies. I had to tell myself not just, there were layers of lies. There were lies and then lies of stories. Everything was a fucking lie. And I've gone back to the lies. I'm, you know, it's like I saw everything, and then everything was like, whoa, the world just turned technicolor, and everything was 3D, everything, and then it just turned into like, well, people are, look at the way they talk to each other, you know, look at the way people are talking to me, and I didn't want to react to people anymore. It just made me want to stay away from people, like, for the last 2 months before this trip, it was like maybe like an hour here or there. I wouldn't be around people, but it was just kind of like, what the fuck is happening in this world? Like, what the actual fuck? Like, I don't know if I want to be a part of it. And then it was just like, I never thought about killing myself more. And then I was like, you don't want to die. Why are you thinking about killing yourself?
The ego wants to die. The body never wants to die.
Like all the time, it was just like, then just to shoot yourself in the head. And you know what? If you really want to kill yourself, don't fucking take pills. You know? Like, man up and fucking shoot yourself in the head. Like, that's the way to go. And it's like, why am I hearing this? This is the stupidest shit.
Exactly. That's the stupidest shit. The ego wants to go away. The ego wants to die. That's why people commit suicide. Suicide is always a mistake. The ego wants to die. But the ego is a kind of a parasite of the healthy human body, the parasite of the mind. It wants to go away, it wants to die, but in its confusion, it thinks that the way to die is to kill the body.
Yeah.
So in the reality, the only way for the ego to die is to be dissolved in your own love. The ego dies into love. But that's the death that we're afraid of.
I hate myself so much. I've spent like a lifetime just told from the moment I could understand how horrible I am. Just hatred for myself is all, you know, it went away for a few months. That shame went away. And it's like, as soon as I'm alone, what did you say? What did you do? What did you say? Oh, you know, maybe you just shouldn't be a part of the world because then you don't have to feel all the shame. It's fucking shame all the time. I'm just shame.
That's how we are treated.
Yeah.
When we are born.
Yeah.
That's how you were treated. And then you learn to treat yourself the same way.
Yeah. I don't want to do it anymore.
You might say that even our bodies are like the sum total of all our past experience. You might actually take this argument very far. You know, you can say the body is a sum total of everything that you ate, every part of your environment, starting with the mother's womb and things like that. But that's actually not the most important thing. Yes, there are some bodily limitations, but the clear, healthy mind, the clear, healthy brain can excel, or at least make significant progress and make beautiful achievements towards pretty much anything that it sets itself on. It's a very, very potent and beautiful cognition machine. You know how they say the mind makes a wonderful servant but a terrible master. Yes, there are some limitations to it, of course. Like if we create some super intelligent AI, we might not even understand what happened. But still, what is much more important in what you said is that the dreaming mind, the lying mind, the imagining minds, because every lie is also imagination believed. So you imagine some things to be true that are not true. So the dreaming mind, the lying mind, the ego is a sum total of all of our past experiences, and not even all of our past experiences, but it's a sum total of all of our past unresolved trauma. That's why we lie. So we lie in order to cope with it all. We lie in order not to feel it. So the lying, the incorrect beliefs about reality, the incorrect belief about yourself. Like, for example, if your mind is telling you all the time how bad you are, that's an incorrect belief about yourself. The incorrect belief about other people, and the emotional suppression, the pain of seeing the world for what it really is, of seeing yourself for how you really were, of seeing reality for how it really is, they are deeply interconnected. It's the reason it's difficult to stop lying is because it hurts, you know. So like, for example, experiencing self-hatred, is it pleasant? Of course not. When you feel self-hatred, you feel really bad, right? And so those lies of like how bad you are and the self-hatred as a sensate experience are intimately interconnected. One is there because the other is there. And that's why when we start seeing through our lies, it hurts, right? And as we explore it, as we accept it, we start seeing that this was just a lie, you know. And in the same way, our perception of other people is skewed in the dream state in order to protect ourselves from seeing how people really are. Like, for example, if you're a child and you were not given unconditional love, but you were told many times that your parents love you, and like loving your parents is obeying them, for example, you're going to start lying to yourself. You're going to distort the meaning of the concept love, and you're going to start lying to yourself to protect yourself from the fear of disobeying, and to protect yourself from the harsh realities that you actually aren't unconditionally loved, and you're actually expected to obey, which is not love, and that's very difficult to see. And so something similar. So what the fuck is wrong with this world? You know, many people when they awaken, they look at this world in disbelief. So a mind that is not in self-deception sees so much suffering, so much distortion, so much manipulation, so much subjugation, so much deceit, so much irrational violence in this world, and it takes quite some time to make your peace with it. And that's why you also don't want to see people. You want to stay away from them.
Yeah, I feel like people just say mean things to each other just to say it.
Exactly. Just, yeah, to elevate each other.
I just ignore it. I'm just like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me anymore.
No, it does not. Yeah, people are mean towards each other just to elevate themselves over each other, just to feel better about themselves temporarily. But it's not even real pleasure. They don't even feel better. They don't address the deep wound. The deep wound is always insecurity and pain inside. The deep wound is always the quest for love. But we're taught that in order to be loved, you need to be what? Better.
Yeah.
You need to be better than the neighbor. You need to be better than your brother. You need to be better than yourself. Right? And so when you elevate, when the mind elevates, when one person elevates themselves over another, demeans them, puts them down, the mind delusionally thinks this is what's going to get you loved.
I've just gone through these feelings like so many times since March, where I finally am able to look back and see that all of this started so long ago.
Oh yes, it starts very, 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 very early. This is a very sick society we live in. It starts really early. It starts even before you begin to speak. That's why in meditation and psychedelic trips, a lot of those experiences and this pain, there are just no words for it. It feels pre-verbal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that we got this planet, but that's the only one we got.
This planet?
Yeah, this mess.
Society.
But you don't have any. You don't got any other one. So you have to learn to live here in this mess.
Like, my whole life was just waking up, just going through periods of existential crisis for months and months and months. Most of my life just waking up, sitting there, going, what the fuck is this? Go outside, smoke a cigarette. What is this? I have no clue where I came from. I have no clue where I'm going, but everybody just keeps waking up and pretending like this is normal. And it's like I'm finally getting to the point where it's like, it doesn't matter where I came from, where I'm going, or what any of this is. It is. It's just, this is just it.
Yep. And the tragedy is that the miserable state, the hateful state, where love is like, this romantic adventure for a few months, is considered normal.
Yeah.
And the state where you can be easily manipulated and emotionally reactive is considered normal. And the truly loving state is usually pathologized. There's something wrong with you. If you're calm and non-reactive and you don't need other people to feel better about yourself, then there's something wrong with you. It's threatening. That's a real mess. And only each individual can figure out their mess because every individual is brought up in the society and their heads become their own mess. And my head was also my own mess, my own theater. So if we want a better society sometime in the future, every individual must do their own inner work.
Yeah.
So I salute you. Bravo. It's never too late. In some ways, your life is just beginning now.
Oh, I wish I had taken better care of my body. I wish this had happened earlier. I wish a million things.
It's never too late.
Yeah. I think the first things that I saw were like the lies I told myself about me, and then the stories, who I was, and then the stories of my life, and then further in the months, or what I learned from my upbringing and my society, and how I harmed other people, and I think those are just really painful. Yeah. I don't know what else to say.
You don't need to say anything else. Thank you for coming here.
I'm very glad to be here. I was scared. I was really scared to come. I didn't feel like as good as everybody else.
Oh, don't worry.
Why do you assume nobody was scared or going through similar stuff? I think most do, right? Difficult. And even if
Can I say one more thing, Artem? Like, lately, one of the things that's been really hard for me to accept is the most painful relationship in my life, my dead mother. She died last year. And yeah, all the way into my 50s, like, fuck my mom. Fuck my mom. Like, what the fuck? And just like, it never ended. It's just never ended. Like, just desperately in love with this woman and never got what I needed. And it's like I go through this, and all of a sudden it's just like, Jesus, you are your mother. That relationship is what taught me to communicate.
Formed you, yes.
That was the relationship where that one-sided relationship that was all her taking from me and never noticing I existed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember ever communicating with her.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I was a doll that she just picked up when she needed me.
So you become similar.
So I learned to treat other people like that. I treated my children like that. I pushed other people away because I needed connection so badly, but because that was how I learned to communicate. And that was how I learned to get my needs met, because that was the relationship I learned from. I learned to have relationships like my mother, the last person I want to be like on the fucking planet.
That always happens. One of my quotes is, ego always becomes what it hates.
Yeah, I remember reading that of yours, and I was like, exactly. And I don't know if I really forgive her yet, but I have a lot more empathy for her.
Of course, because it was also not her fault she was this way. Someone somewhere similarly treated her this way.
Oh, absolutely.
And so she was brought up with this feeling of lack. And when you are not given natural attention that you're supposed to be given, then of course you grow selfish. When you're in pain yourself, how can you take care of others? Yeah. That's why the spiritual journey is always about yourself. Take care of yourself first. Heal yourself first. Take care of your pain first. Learn to love yourself first. Then you can extend this towards others. We cannot treat others better than we treat ourselves. And the way that we treat ourselves is oftentimes and usually exactly how we were treated when we were very young.
Yeah, I think now, I don't know how I'll feel about her a week from now or a month from now, but recently when I think of her, I just think about her need being so amplified that it blocked out everything around her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Hurt people.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You were very brave for coming here.
Thank you.
Never try to hide your tears. Tears are the most beautiful thing. Osho once said, only the eyes full of tears can see the truth. And he was precisely right.
Yeah, I really can relate with the first part that you said, like with the fear of not existing. And for me, when I take psychedelics, it's always this kind of fear, like nothing makes sense. I always get like abstract visuals and images, and then there's always the feeling of, okay, everything is just imagination, and there's just me. But I guess the assumption is I'm just completely alone, like in the infinite or something like that. That's just sheer terror.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do about it, think about it. Yeah, I don't know, like.
You cannot think yourself out of it.
Yeah, or to rationalize it. Is it maybe also like this feeling of that I never existed for my parents or my mother, that I have this feeling of I don't even exist or something like that?
So it's like there's nothing I can say to you that will take away from this terror. So this terror needs to be lived through. I can only like say something logical to you that will make sense, and by my own example can show you that you can live through it and actually be a healthy individual.
Would be a start.
So what you're experiencing as psychedelics and meditation
Yeah.
is kind of what it looks like from the perspective of the ego. Not everything is imagination. You can say, yes, you can. Theoretically, you can say the whole life is imagination. Everything is imagination. This chair is imagination. Everything is imagination. But that's taking perspective of the physical death. So from the perspective, you're going to die and you're going to die forever. From that perspective, everything here is a dream. Everything here is imagination. But then there's something else that is going on. The ego is literally imagination. Like, at least I can say, okay, so from the perspective of death, everything that's happening now is not real. That's just a philosophical statement, right? I can say this chair is not real, none of this is real, but I can still touch it. But the ego is literally not real. Literally. It literally doesn't exist. So from what you think you are, this character, this persona was self-created. It is created by the mind, and it literally doesn't exist. So from its perspective, which is a very small, tiny part of your brain that you kind of identify with, from its perspective, enlightenment is death.
Yeah.
But it's not actual death. It's not the death of the body. It's the experience of the dissolution of the ego that we're afraid of. So everything that we're afraid of about death. So actually, what we're afraid of about death is seeing ourselves, seeing the ego in its entirety, right? That's why the religions like death is like meeting your maker. Well, the maker is you. The maker of the ego is you. So it's like to see how this persona formed, how it operates, to leave it behind, to dissolve it in self-awareness. That's what we call death. That's what we're afraid of. The actual death you cannot be afraid of because it's not an experience. There is nothing there. But
Yeah.
But this process, there's a lot of things there. There is fear, there's terror, there's tears, there's anger, there's lots of stuff that we want to experience. So what you're going through when you like take psychedelics or in meditation, when you feel like nothing is real, you getting the glimpse into that nothing in your mind, nothing in the dreaming mind is real. It's all made of lies. But you can be in the state of consciousness when you are literally nothing is real. You're like looking at the star-eyed, like nothing is real at all. But I will touch you and I will say, did you feel it? And you will say, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a exaggeration in a way that nothing is real. Like, I have a more precise statement is nothing in the mind is real. Nothing that you think of yourself as.
Yeah.
What kind of a person you are, who are you, what you must do, what you should do, how you must behave. Nothing of that is real. And the stories of the mind are not real.
Is that a fear that is just a fear? Or is there something behind the fear? Or is it just terror?
It's the very kind of fundamentally egoic existential terror. It's the fear of death. It's also the fear of life. You can also speak about it in many ways. You can say that this fear itself is the foundation of the egoic existence. You can say that this fear is the fear of dying into love. You can say that this fear is the fear of acceptance of death. So you can say that humanity is crazy because it lives in denial of death. So all of these ideas, for family honor, you have like, that's denial of death. Like death is a great equalizer. So the whole of this hierarchy is denial of death. You cannot take your riches to the grave. So you can say it's a fear of death. You can also say it's a fear of life. It's a fear of living fully. But on the practical level, when you experience it in meditation or psychedelic trips, that's the fear of seeing more of the ego. That's the fear of seeing more of yourself. That's the fear of seeing more of the self-deceit and of all the emotional suppression and the energetic physical transformation, the physical experiences that follow. So in a way, it's a fear of feeling more. It's a fear of experiencing more. It's a fear of feeling your pains, but also it's a fear of feeling your sensations, your bodies to such greater intensity that you have forgotten a long time ago. Because sometimes people, especially in psychedelic trips, they can get to states where there is no more pain. For example, they went through some deeply emotional release, but everything is feeling so intensely that it just overwhelms the senses. It's just too much, so much beauty, so much intensity, so much acuity in every sensation that all of this work was dulled by the continually spinning mind. So it's the fear of getting closer to life than becoming life. So literally becoming all of this sensation. It's the fear of intensity of life itself.
Is this kind of a glimpse of enlightenment, but from the ego's perspective?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what enlightenment looks like from the ego's perspective. From the ego perspective, nothing is real. It looks crazy because in the enlightenment, because what is afraid of enlightenment does not exist in enlightenment.
So it's a total surrendering into this nothingness, right?
Yeah. So that's why fear is unavoidable, but don't be afraid of the fear. Don't be afraid of experiencing fear. Allow the fear. Let it in. It's not gonna happen in an instant, right? It takes time and practice, and it's going to happen when you least expect it. It's just a process of allowing of surrendering to reality, because the ego lives in denial of reality. The ego lives. So you can actually even accurately talk about the ego as the sum processes of in your mind, which are in a continuous argument with reality. You see? So enlightenment, those processes, so the ego is also not a thing. You cannot touch it. You can touch the chair, but you cannot touch the ego. The ego is a processes that are happening in the mind. And these processes are in constant argument and conflict with reality, with yourself, with other people, and just with the reality, also with the reality of your situation. You're gonna die. and so these processes do not exist in the enlightened state. So what is afraid of enlightenment also does not exist in enlightenment. So that's kind of the terror that the ego goes through.
Yeah, like that's fear of enlightenment, actually, yeah.
Fear of enlightenment, fear of life, fear of death, it's all the same thing. Just like life, God, universe, existence, they all synonyms, actually. So this kind of existential terror, that's why people experience suicidal ideation and stuff like that. But just they don't do anything, don't harm your body, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, the fear is this, everything does not exist, but at the end, just the ego doesn't exist, and I wake up to, okay, that's still there. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but
everything you thought were you actually doesn't exist. So because the ego lives in a literally imaginary dream world, and the enlightenment is a destruction of this world. It's a destruction of the imaginary world.
Is it the feeling of separation itself, or is it just separation that I'm experiencing in this moment? Because the feeling is of...
In a way, but if you experience the terror, then you experience it. So you experience the terror that accompanies the closing of the separation.
Yeah, I guess so, but...
Because what separates you from reality is like layers of fear and other stuff. So as you go through those layers, you're literally experiencing them, and you're becoming closer and closer to reality, closer and closer to yourself. So practically, first don't berate yourself, or don't think you're doing something wrong if you like can't. Oh, I couldn't let go. It's like, you don't like, no one can let go, because the thing that tries to let go, the things that thinks that it can or cannot let go, literally does not exist in letting go. So no one can attain enlightenment. The ego cannot attain enlightenment. So
Fuck.
yeah, exactly.
Why did you told me not earlier? Like,
Well, sorry, bad news.
would have never been on the journey. Fuck the journey.
But the ego is also not in the driver's seat of the journey.
Tell that the ego.
The ego actually does not control the journey. So when like there's terror, and then you relax, you try to welcome it, but then you understand that, okay, you said not today, you kind of rejected it, whatever. It doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. So you just practice. Just every time the fear comes, every time the terror comes, invite it, stay with it, breathe, remind yourself to breathe, remind yourself that you are safe, and invite this fear, become curious about it, become interested about it, welcome this fear, you see. And that's what I mean when I say, fear is unavoidable, but don't be afraid of the fear itself. Invite this fear as an experience, and see where it leads you, and kind of step by step, it will lead you to more and more interesting places.
Yeah, and paired with that, this terror, paired with that, with this experience is like the feeling of, I'm completely alone. Like the feeling of everybody is kind of connected and does belong to something, is kind of connected to this world, and I'm not. That's something like that. Yeah.
Well, the complete aloneness is also complete connectedness. So, but it is true that every one of us is completely alone in their own experience, and also everyone dies alone. You cannot take anyone.
Yeah, I don't want anyone, right? But
so every one of us fundamentally is completely alone.
Like the connection to life itself, or something like that.
You are life itself.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like that yet.
No, not yet. We'll see what happens later.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can add something about the fear, what I found helpful for myself is when I'm overwhelmed with fear, especially if it's on the topic of death and what's going to happen, or what's going on right now, why I'm experiencing fear without any reasonable reasons to experience it. So I find it helpful to just look at the fear as sensations and feelings rather than trying to understand it. Like, ooh, there is rush running through my body.
Yeah.
Ooh, the breaths are like...
Yeah. Oh, there's fear.
My heart is like boom, 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 like beating so hard. And when you look at it as a just sensation and you're like, okay, my body is going through something, it's okay. We'll just look at it as a sensations instead of trying to, explain what is happening. Like, is there a reason? What should I do something? Or should I not do something about it? Should I contemplate what it's about? Like, oh, it's death, what death means and stuff like that. So when, for myself, when I notice that I go into the rumination, it kind of prevents me from exploring the fear. And when I look at it as just a bunch of sensations that I'm experiencing, I find that it helps me ease into the fear and more kind of explore it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why
Thank you.
that's why I teach in meditation to take attention from the story. Let the story spin because you can't stop it, but take attention from the story and start exploring the actual sensation. Become curious about like how does my body feel like when there's fear? All like hot flashes, heart beating.
Yeah, sometimes I'm kind of like really in the zone, and then it just feels like literally everything is dissolving sometimes, like, and
Sometimes it feels like that. Exactly.
like natural, right? When I'm on psychedelics, it's I don't know, not possible for me.
So then you don't need to use psychedelics right now, right? So use meditation. And if you want to use, if you still want to use psychedelics, well, the reason to use psychedelics is that when you feel like you can take more intensity. If it's intense enough, then you don't need to use it at all.
Yeah.
Right? If you feel like maybe you're stagnating or you feel like you can take more, and then if you do decide to do this, then just take very small doses. That's going to be more than enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see, you don't need to take a very big dose. There's no
Yeah.
need to do it.
Just speaking from psychology, there's like a body psychotherapist. He's pretty known, like William Reich, and he actually conceptualized different body types of body armors, which are specific ego formations, so to speak. And there's like one ego formation. It's called, I actually have the same. It's like the controller, and the controller is kind of like this thing. Actually, he just explains what the different defense mechanisms are, that how the ego tries to defend, what emotions are behind the defense mechanisms. But he also says what is like the core emotion to get to true self. And the interesting thing is with the controller, it's those two. It's terror and loneliness. And for others, like there's the helper personalities. For them, it's a lot of sadness. So for me, this map was really helpful to kind of also feel understood, right? Not to get too much in my mind about it, but to just see, oh, what I'm experiencing is actually and of course the journey probably is really complex. You can't just say it's always like this in this matter, but actually I found it quite interesting that exactly those two things were what you described, being in front of like the door or into it, and terror and loneliness are exactly those emotional experiences.
Yeah, so I think, okay, last question and then we'll finish.
I just want to ask a little bit about this fear. When you have this fear in the body and you look at it and you see the fear in the body, but the body it feels like the body is scared. But I don't know what word I would use if I say the mind, but I can look at it and see, I see it fear. I can't explain why. I can talk to the fear just to calm it down, but it feels like it's two different things. I don't know how to explain it.
So let me ask you a question. When this fear comes, how exactly does it manifest in the body?
Panic.
That's a word. How exactly does it manifest in the body? Panic, we say panic when there is a sensation so unpleasant that we think erroneously that we absolutely must do something about it. So we want to jump and we want to run somewhere. That's okay, that's a desire, that's what the mind wants us to do. But what is this sensation that is causing it? How exactly? Have you looked into it?
Yeah, also it's the heart, very very hard heart beating. The body feels shaky. It's almost like the death feeling in the body.
Yes.
Yeah, but I can stand and look at it. And even if I can feel calm in one way, but the body still feels this.
Yes, and that's okay, and it will. Yes, so you will witness the body go through those waves of fear. That's entirely natural in the process. So basically, let the body shake, It's okay. You can look at it. I mean, sometimes it helps with others, but even if you're alone, you can look at it. You can look at the body shaking. Feel this heart region. Take your awareness there also. So just kind of observe the body going through the fear, and you don't need to do anything about it at all because you're safe.
Yeah.
That's part of the process. That's how it goes. I experienced a tremendous amount of fear and all sorts of manifestations: hot flashes, cold flashes, tremors, kind of, you name it, basically.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.